Good morning, Christine, Rob, and Diana. Firstly, I wanted to thank you all for agreeing to be a part of this video. We're here to, as I said, to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, Christine, I was hoping you could give us some insight as to how the Diversity and Inclusion Committee got started here at the firm.
Our DEI committee came into being about 3 years ago. Our firm had always, at that point, been involved in DEI initiatives and some education as well, particularly on the recruiting side of things. But it hadn't really been unified. And so the idea with our committee was to sort of try and do an assessment of what we were doing at the firm and bring it under sort of an umbrella so we could evaluate, see if there were gaps in what we were doing, and then proceed in a more thoughtful way. And of course, when we did that, we saw there were some gaps in what we were doing, and that gave us a lot of incentive to move forward with it. And the world has changed a lot in the last 3 years. And of course, D&I issues have been top of mind for so many of us. And so our committee has really evolved along those lines.
So my next question would be, and I'll pose it to you, Diana, what approach has the firm taken to integrate these principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion into practice?
Our committee has two main focuses. First, general education and training. This is our priority. We started with the goal of running 2 specific sessions, which would be mandatory for our lawyers and voluntary for staff. First, it was understanding unconscious bias and how to interrupt it. And second, understanding cultural competencies. However, since starting to run these sessions, we've seen the value in an enthusiasm for continuing to offer more training and education to our lawyers. And we are currently working on expanding our D&I education and training. We will also be mandating specific sessions for our partners and leadership, including our compensation committee, and continue to expand the training we do for recruiting and hiring. The committee's second main focus is promoting our firm's commitment to D&I generally, internally, and externally through internal emails, social media, and our website. We have an internal calendar of events to acknowledge important D&I dates. We have acknowledged these dates and provided related educational resources via email to our lawyers and staff. And now we're working on a more regular newsletter format. We also encourage our lawyers to be involved in their communities through professional organizations such as the South Asian Bar Association and the Federation of Asian Canadian Lawyers. As well, we sponsor and donate to various D&I initiatives, including law student-based initiatives such as the Black Law Students Association and the Allard Law Women's Caucus. We also work alongside other firm committees, such as our Women's Forum and our Philanthropic Initiatives Committee, to sponsor community organizations with a D&I-related mandate. As a third objective, we have also looked at trying to track and monitor our D&I stats to ensure that our firm is tracking and monitoring our progress on D&I issues.
Canada as a whole has had international eyes on it recently, given the continued discoveries of the unmarked graves of Indigenous children across the country. This has reignited a national conversation as to what steps we still have to take to support the Indigenous population and Indigenous peoples. Can you speak a bit about the firm's approach towards these issues in terms of D&I?
The example of Indigenous issues and steps that can be taken towards support for Indigenous people, including lawyers, and towards reconciliation is a good example for the role that our D&I committee can play in our firm and does play. There's to back up, there's no question that the discovery of the graves has ignited very significant conversation regarding Indigenous people in Canada. I think the primary conversation is a recognition of the history of racism towards Indigenous people and the inequality that's suffered by Indigenous people in Canada. In your question, you referenced reigniting conversation, respecting steps to support Indigenous people. And I suppose I'll make 2 points on that. I certainly hope that's correct. And I believe that it is. Recognition of racism and inequality is the necessary first step, but understanding and implementing actual steps that are required to overcome the effects of that racism is the critical next step. And that takes education, organization, commitments, those things. And that's where the D&I committee can come in for a firm, and ours does. For our committee, a primary focus is to identify and facilitate the firm's access to appropriate education and training. And to that end, we have arranged and had conducted an Indigenous cultural competency session for all firm members. And we've identified and provided to our lawyers various educational resources to advance cultural competency. We're in the process of implementing a reconciliation action plan, which identifies and implements and then monitors tangible goals and initiatives, some of which include promoting awareness of the important dates for Indigenous people, like the National Indigenous History Month or National Indigenous Peoples Day, Orange Shirt Day. A land acknowledgement at our reception. We've recently signed on to a 3-year commitment of funding for a program that provides free LSLAP prep courses to both Indigenous and Black undergraduate students to assist with their entry into law school. And part of that commitment we're offering to them to provide additional training and mentorship on their path towards law school.
What advice do you have for a firm that's just embarking on developing a diversity program?
I think having a D&I policy is critical, as it not only acknowledges the firm's commitment to advancing and promoting diversity and inclusion, but it also provides the foundation for the firm's D&I goals, which is the basis to form an action plan. And that would be my next advice, is to develop an action plan annually and be flexible and look at it throughout the year. And the action plan should be something that's realistic in terms of what can be achieved for the year. And then generally speaking, I would say that there will be growing pains. We've encountered them. It's a continuous learning process and everybody is at different levels.
The health and success of a law firm going forward is going to be greatly impacted by your commitment to real and meaningful policies and practices related to diversity, equality, and inclusion. It's necessary for people currently in your firms to have a true sense of belonging. It's necessary for you to attract and retain the best new lawyers, I think, and it's necessary to fulfill what are the reasonable requirements and expectations of your clients, who are increasingly demanding that law firms and lawyers demonstrate a commitment to DE&I. And I don't think it can realistically be done without an organized program that facilitates and identifies and works towards accomplishing all of those goals.
Absolutely. You guys all raised some wonderful points. So I think we have come to the conclusion of this conversation. Again, I just want to thank you all for providing your insight and your perspective onto such an important and timely topic. I really appreciate it. It was helpful for me, and I'm sure it will be helpful for the audience who will be viewing this. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.